The following is a special presentation of the PDF Sports Network.
Right. The podcast that uncovers the origin stories of some of the biggest names in sports, media, entertainment, and so much more. Nick Durst here along with Joe Calabrese. And Joe, very excited today. We have another Emmy Award winner on with us, another great Sports Center anchor, and this should be a fun show.
Yes, he joined ESPN in May 2015. Had more than 2 decades in journalism before he got there. And yes, one of the most prominent, well-known Sports Center anchors who's there at the moment. We welcome Michael Eaves to the show. Michael, welcome. How you doing today?
Appreciate it, man. I'm feeling good. It was a good sports weekend. So if you're a sports fan, man, you had to be kind of geeked with how it played out. Whether you had a rooting interest or not, I mean, you were entertained regardless.
Very hit or miss here in New York.
Lots going on for sure, though. That's for certain. But you mentioned it, Joe, that 2015, Michael has joined ESPN. I can't believe it's been 9 years, Michael. I mean, it's crazy.
You can't believe it, bruh. I can't believe it. I was actually I was in LA over the weekend, and I was talking to someone about it. And then I actually did a show at Stanford, right? First time he and I had ever been on the set at the same time together. And I was like, I've been here 9.5 years. When I said it to him and when it hit me in the face, I'm like, damn, it's been that long. It's I'll say this though, the older you get, the faster time goes. And I turned 50 a couple years ago, so it's clearly getting faster each and every day. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you definitely, I mean, you've made an impact for sure, but it's this is probably the wrong word, but it's been a very quiet 9 years. Wow, 9 years already. It's crazy the span, all the stuff you covered. At the time you joined, you had the whole Donald Sterling thing, and you were the go-to guy at the time based on your LA roots, and it's evolved through there, and a lot going on in your career, which we're going to touch here in momentarily. But they say that a lot could be told about a person by figuring out what's the first app they check on their phone in the morning. So when you wake up, you check your phone, Michael. What's the first thing you're checking out?
I hate to admit what I'm about to say based on just how the app has transformed the last couple of years, but it's Twitter. Because Twitter has for me, the way I have mine set up, has become like a news feed, right? So it's easy for me to find out what's popping first thing in the morning by going to Twitter. And then that takes me somewhere else, whether it's to the New York Times or ESPN app, obviously, and different things like that. But the way everything for me aggregates to Twitter, it's the best place for me to find out what's going on, and then I can go from where else after that.
Yeah, I miss those old TweetDeck days. I used to be the column person. I don't know if you know
Me
anybody.
too, bro. Yeah. Oh, man. When they took TweetDeck away, I was like, what are you doing? I was that guy. I mean, I had so many columns going across the screen that it literally, I had it based on sports. I had it based on sports personalities. I had everything just perfectly. And another reason that I think Elon Musk has messed up Twitter. But nonetheless, let's not get to that conversation. But I do miss those TweetDeck days as well.
Yep. So Nick and I have backgrounds in sports, and when people who work in research and the broadcast side behind the scenes, a lot of those people kind of are the similar people like us. They have them open.
Yeah.
But let's talk about your background. Playing golf and basketball at South Hopkins High School. You were an athlete, right? Is that what you wanted to be when you grew up, an athlete?
Yeah, I think like so many kids that grow up playing sports, starting, in elementary school, things like that, you always dream about being a professional athlete. Now, granted, where I grew up, a very small rural town in southwestern Kentucky, the number of professional athletes in that area are pretty much zip outside maybe Rex Chapman, at least when I was growing up. So I knew it was going to be a hard dream to achieve anyway. And then from an athletic standpoint, guys, if you realize if you don't get to a certain point, you have zero chance of doing it. And so I tore my ACL playing basketball, so that ruined that dream. And then, when I was going to college, I'm like, well, I still want to be involved in sports. So what's a good way to do it? Coaching, sure. I didn't love the idea of coaching, but all I did when I was a kid, if I wasn't playing sports, I was watching them on television. So to give you a quick story, I grew up, my hometown's only 800 people, right? So Nashville was the biggest city that was close to us, and that was an hour 40 away, right? So when I was 10 years old, we didn't have cable television. So my dad bought us one of those big, huge 12-foot satellite dishes that people used to have back then. And then in the mid 80s, if you had one of those dishes, you could watch anything you wanted absolutely free. And so I just gravitated towards all sports. I became a Darryl Strawberry fan because I could watch Mets games. I became a Lakers fan because I could watch Magic Johnson play. So all I did was watch sports constantly. So once I realized my professional dreams were shot, I was like, well, how can I stay involved? I was like, you know what? How about a sports reporter? Because they go to all the cool games that I'm watching on the regular. And that's basically how my career got started, because I want to stay involved in sports and I love watching games on TV.
So you became a Mets fan, Nick. That was the wrong choice, right?
That's the right choice.
Hey,
I'm
in
sorry.
86,
I'm
in
sorry.
86, it was a great choice because I remember that championship team with Darryl Strawberry and Doc Gooden and Keith Hernandez and all that squad. And it's funny, when Strawberry left the Mets to go to the Dodgers, I became a Dodgers fan because of Darryl Strawberry, quite honestly.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, what's like the closest baseball team to Kentucky? It's really, there's nothing. Like, is Atlanta Braves?
Yeah. Well, like kind of like where I lived, it was technically with Cincinnati based on mileage.
Yeah.
But you saw more Braves and Cubs games because of television, right? So plus I hate all things Cincinnati, so that's another conversation as well. So I can never be a Reds fan. But like, and again, so like all the, like right now, I don't have any professional allegiances as it relates to my fandom, because all the ones I had growing up, they were all pick and choose. I mean, I was a Raiders fan because of Marcus Allen, and then eventually those things fade away. And the irony of that was I was a Raiders, Dodgers, and Lakers fan. I moved to Los Angeles and I covered two of those teams directly. And the closer I got to them, the more my affinity went away, because I just didn't like, whether it was conscious or subconscious, the idea of having a emotional investment in the outcome of the game, to me, would preclude me from doing my job properly, right? So it just went away. And the only thing I root for hard now is obviously my alma mater, the University of Kentucky. But interesting enough, my first TV job was in Lexington before I graduated. So I started covering the team a little bit. And I knew a lot of those guys because some of them were my friends on the basketball team. And in the midst of covering them, that fandom went away as well, because I thought it would cloud my judgment, right? Like, we think every call should go our way when obviously that's not the case. And so once I left Kentucky, and actually I went to Memphis after Lexington. Once I left the SEC country, my fandom for Kentucky at that emotional level finally came back, and that's where I am now. But any other professional team, no, I don't care who wins or loses.
So you graduated from Kentucky in '94. And as we know, 2 years later, 4 years later, Kentucky wins the national championship, right? One of the blue bloods of college basketball, one of the greatest, most prestigious schools. So I guess when you were at school, were you involved with the basketball team in any way? And you talked about getting your first job out of college with WKYT as a sports reporter and anchor, right? So talk about how that all kind of bled into each other. Yeah,
just through, being on campus, I struck up friendships with several guys on the basketball team. A guy named Henry Thomas, who ended up getting injured, is still my best friend to this day. Jamal Masher and I were freshmen. Jamel Martinez, freshman at the same time. Travis Ford and I grew up together. We played at rival high school. So I just had this natural connection to so many guys on the team. And I ended up working Rick Pitino's camps in the summer as coaches and counselors. So I had all of that, connection to the team. And I ended up getting that job right before my senior classes started, because back then, early 90s, most journalism programs back then, outside maybe Syracuse, were really print-based, right? And there wasn't much broadcast curriculum at Kentucky at the time I was there. So I was fortunate enough to get this fellowship that led to a part-time job at WKYT, which happened to be the flagship station of the University of Kentucky Sports Network. So back then, if games weren't on national TV or Jefferson Pilot, which eventually evolved to be what's the SEC network now, then Kentucky would show their games on tape delay, and the station that would produce those games was WKYT, and then they would simulcast it across the state to different affiliates. So going to that particular sports program gave me a huge boost in just being able to be around constant content creation, even though we didn't call it that back then, because we had the coaches shows, we had the pre and post game shows for all that kind of stuff, and we had on Saturday, we had a nightly wrap-up show that ended up being like a 45-minute sports show. This was Market 69. So back then, that didn't happen in most places. I mean, you even look at the stations in New York, you maybe have, 2, 3 on-air sports talents. We had 5 anchors at my station at WKYT, and there was Market 69 at the time. So I luckily to be in the right place at the right time, to be given, a really good opportunity. And from there, obviously my career just kind of took off.
Yes, it did. Let's talk about moving to ABC 24, WPTY.
That was in Memphis. And again, right place, right time. Like the result, if I didn't want to stay in Lexington my entire life, right? I knew at a young age I wanted to, leave Kentucky and cover the biggest events in the country, or quite frankly around the world. And you can't do that from Lexington, all due respect. So I knew I was going to have to make my way up, the market ladder, as we used to say back in the day. And so Memphis was market 40 at the time, much larger. And then when I was there, a couple just out of the blue things happened. John Calipari got the University of Memphis basketball job, and the station I worked for did the coaches shows for University of Memphis, and we also covered some of the games the same way KYT did with Kentucky. The Grizzlies moved from Vancouver. No one would have thought that ever would have happened. And then the Mike Tyson Lennox Lewis fight came to Memphis, right? Yep. All those things happened in a very short period of time while I was there, and I was able to be involved in all of those events. I ended up becoming the sideline reporter for the Grizzlies on Fox Sports South, and that experience then led me to a job in LA. But again, being in Memphis for that short period of time, so many things happened. Fortunately enough for me that it was able to just, again, kick me down the road towards the career goal that I already set for myself.
Well, Joe, so far I'm hearing a lot of right place, right time. So
it's always right place,
things
right
just
time.
work out like that.
It is. It is. I will say this though, it is about being in the right place at the right time. Okay, but what do you do when you're in that place at the right time? All right, I'll give you an example. Like my first job at WKYT, again, I was a senior in college. I had to be at work every morning at 5 a.m. for 5 days in a row to help with the morning show. That was a news job. That's not what I signed up for, right? But I needed the experience, and a little paycheck helped. But once I got that position, then I started two things. One, I started putting sports content into the morning shows that wasn't there previously. Then after my shift was over around 9 a.m., sometimes I would skip class to stay and help the guy who did the noon sportscast put together his show. Then I would come in on Friday nights and Saturdays sometimes when I wasn't getting paid to go out and help them shoot high school and college sports, right? Right place, right time. But what do you do with that opportunity? And I tell people coming up now in the industry, we are so competitive as an industry. Like we are more competitive, quite honestly, than professional sports. Okay. I mentioned you can count how many people are on air doing sports in the entire market of New York. How many professional athletes are there? Way more. Right. So the opportunities for us to do what we're doing, whether it's a podcast like you guys are doing right now or radio or TV, are much more limited than actually being a professional athlete. True. Right. So you have to take advantage of the opportunity you are given, but then you do that by doing what others won't. Right. You have to go and practice stuff when you're not getting paid. You have to go right when no one's going to see it. Same way athletes go and practice when they're not getting attention. How many shots does Steph Curry shoot every day besides the ones we see in the game, right? How many guys take extra BP? How many balls do professional golfers hit on the driving range? So if you really want this as a career, how much work are you putting in when no one's seeing it? And that's the question.
Yeah, the hard work always seems to pay off. And you mentioned it. You had the little gig with the Grizzlies, and then that parlayed you into moving out to the West Coast and transitioning there to Fox Sports Net. So curious for you, what's the transition like going from where you were in school through, going through the markets, which is what everyone was taught, and now, okay, I'm going to go out and work for a regional sports network. So what was that transition like going from a news station to a regional sports network?
In some regards, it wasn't that much different than what I did in Kentucky and LA minus Memphis. Okay, so in Memphis, we didn't have the same amount of sports content that we were producing at my station in Lexington, right? But when I went to LA, obviously it was nothing but sports. So if you're doing that on the regular, the way I was in Kentucky, it was an easier transition to get to LA. It was harder in Memphis to cut down, quite honestly, the amount of writing and stuff we were doing in Lexington because you didn't have as much time in the newscast in Memphis. But once I got to Los Angeles, it was all sports all the time. We were doing a nightly sportscast, Southern California Sports Report, so similar to SportsCenter. Plus, we had we had the contracts for the Clippers, the Lakers, the Dodgers, the Angels, the Kings, the Ducks, USC, and UCLA. Plus, that particular region was the main flagship for the entire Pac-12 national broadcast on Fox Sports Net. Plus, we did Big West games. Plus, we did WCC games. So, like, all this content was there. So it was just all you did was sports. So honestly, it was easy to make that transition because you didn't have to worry about anything else. And there was no cut down trying to wheel in a highlight into the newscast when every highlight was nothing but sports.
Yeah, a lot of teams there. Most of those teams did very well in your tenure over there. So what's some of the coolest games or events you got to cover in your time out in LA?
Oh, man. People ask me this a lot, like what's your favorite event or the best thing that you ever witnessed? And a lot of them happened in LA. I was there for Kobe's 81-point game. I was there for the Bush push game, USC Notre Dame. I was there for UCLA's comeback against Gonzaga in the NCAA tournament. If you remember that, they scored like 9 points in the final, like 27 seconds or something. And then one of the craziest things a lot of people forget sometimes because it happened in LA and it was so late, there was a game between the Dodgers and the Padres. They were down 4 runs in the bottom of the 9th inning and hit 4 consecutive home runs to tie it up. And then Nomar hit a walk-off in the 10th. Like, that's one of the craziest things that have ever happened in baseball. And I was there for that. And I had the interview with Nomar on the field after the game as part of the Dodgers broadcast. So I was very fortunate to see some really cool stuff happen. I mean, Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, they won Heisman's while I was out there. I was covering the Angels when Mike Trout came up to join them. Just being in that regard is really about being in the right place at the right time because some of that stuff was out of my control. But to be able to witness it there in the 10 years I was in LA, again, some of the greatest sporting events that people remember, and I was a part of a lot of them.
So you've covered all the sports. I'm curious from your perspective, doing the roles you've done, whether it's a studio host or in the stadium, in the arena as the sideline guy, what's the most difficult one to execute as the position of the on-air talent?
All right, so the hardest job in sports, and I've never done it, but I know it's the hardest job in sports, is radio hockey.
Oh, yeah.
Radio play-by-play hockey is by far the hardest job to do because the movement is constant. There are no timeouts, so to speak. When you have shift changes, you got to be aware of all of that, and you have to describe all the action. That is by far the hardest one to do. But to do them effectively, it is radio play-by-play is probably the hardest job to do. The easiest one to do, I think, is baseball television because so much of the story is right there in front of you. You just have to describe here or there. So, like, for me, I never really aspired to be a play-by-play guy because, in essence, I'm a fan, right? And I'm like most fans. What do? We talk about the game before the game is played, tell what we think is going to happen. We watch the game. Halftime, we talk about the game. We watch the second half, and after the game, we talk about it. So that's why I always envision myself as a studio host, setting up people to get perspective on what we're all thinking about what's going to happen and then what we did see. Now, I've done play-by-play, obviously, and I'm continuing to do it now. I'm doing some college basketball, and I'll be doing the TGL stuff, Tiger Woods Indoor League. But those have always been the hardest jobs to me is play-by-play because I feel like you're as much a part of the game as a player because you're trying to convey what's happening. And I've said this publicly, and I've said it to him. I think all jobs in sports television or all jobs in sports broadcast, call it that, the best broadcaster of all time is Mike Tirico. He's done all the jobs. He's hosted SportsCenter. He hosted a studio show. He's done play-by-play radio. He's done play-by-play television. And he's done them all exceptional. He may not be the best play-by-play person of all time. He may not be the best studio host of all time. He may not be the best SportsCenter anchor of all time, but he's the only one who's did them all, and he's done them exceptionally. And that, to me, makes him the best sports broadcaster of all time.
Yeah, and one of, like, I guess, a handful of people to anchor the Olympics. So definitely with you.
Exactly, right? He's done all the things, right? And he's done them all, like, at a level that we all aspire to. And that, to me, is why he'll always be the best.
Absolutely. So you had a great run out there in Los Angeles. I'm sure you enjoyed the weather for sure. Talk to us about the shift to Al Jazeera America. You were still doing sports, but then you had to do some news as well. So was it tough to go back to your Kentucky days and revisit the news strategy and Did you like it? Did you hate it? What was it like doing news again?
Oh, that was the worst aspect of my career, but it's not even funny. And the reason I went there to begin with was by the time I left LA at Fox Sports West, I was doing like 160 to 170 live events a year,
Oh,
right? Traveling with the Clippers and traveling with the Angels. And I just got tired of the grind. And we didn't have as many studio shows back then because everything was about the game and pre and post game shows. So I just got tired of the grind. I wanted to be in the studio. And Al Jazeera, they came over here with an idea that they could create, what they do internationally from an English standpoint, domestically here in the States. And a lot of people were not familiar with their product. I just happen to be. And from a sports standpoint, they cover all the big stuff: F1, Premier League, the Olympics, rugby. And I was like, wow, I get a chance to maybe cover all those events that I would never have the opportunity to do if I stayed here at Fox. So it got me out of the plane and all the travel into a studio and then covering the biggest events. And at the time, the World Cup was going to come to Qatar, which Doha is obviously the home of Al Jazeera. So that's why I took the job. But when I got there, quickly I realized that what they had promised was not going to be met on any level, quite honestly. And so then you start about, all right, so how do I get out of this and get back to what I really wanted to do?
mm-hmm.
And while I was going through that, they decided to get rid of all sports content altogether, unless it was something you could just throw in, right? They just tried to become CNN, which is
Right.
to me was dumb because you weren't trying to be CNN to begin with. You're trying to be something different. But I didn't want to be off television. And I didn't want to just be sitting at home, which I could have and still got paid. I just felt it's always good to continually work, right? So I went and did news. One, just so I could just keep doing my craft. But also I'm like, well, damn, what if this sports thing ends right now because I made a bad decision? Can I go and do news as a career? I was like, well, let's find out, right? Let's go do it full time and see if you really could do it or you would enjoy doing it. I realized, A, I can do it. B, I don't know if I would want to do it. Especially at that time in my career. So then it was like all about, all right, now I got to get another sports job somewhere. And that became my next goal, to get out of that spot and go back to what I wanted to do.
Very nice. So you got back to what you wanted to do, which is where you are now, ESPN, the worldwide leader. So talk to us about the process of getting over to ESPN. Is it something where you're making calls, people are finding you? Do you have to actually go in physically to do a taped audition in the studio? Do you go with another anchor? Talk to us about that whole process.
Well, again, this was another right place. I don't want to say right time because this happened because I went to Stuart Scott's funeral. So Stuart Scott was a dear friend of mine. And, he died in January 2015. I go to the funeral and, through the years, you work in this business long enough, a lot of people who work in different places. And Rob King, who I've known for years through the National Association of Black Journalists, was running SportsCenter at the time. And Rob and I were friends, and he was at Stewart's funeral, and we struck up a conversation. He said, "Hey, man, when you get back home, let's get caught up. Let's have a phone call." Right? Said nothing about working at ESPN because that was the farthest thing from my mind at the time. And so he calls me. We're talking, blah 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 blah. And I told him I was trying to get out of Al Jazeera, thinking about going to other places, asking him what he thought about the market at the time, blah blah blah. He said, "Dude, won't you come up to ESPN and go through a full audition?" I was like, "Dude, that's not why we're having this conversation." He said, "No, I know. It's my idea. I want you to come up and do it." So I go up, I do it. You meet with like 5 or 6 different people, and then you do a full audition. And it was a solo anchor, but solo anchor. And then Tim Legler came in as my basketball analyst for like a 5 or 6 minute segment. You go through some highlights, you do a news story, you set up Tim. And then the cool thing about it is they throw some breaking news at you. And it's like, oh, this trade just happened, Mike, just da-da-da-da. And so go through the whole thing. And it was a layup drill for me. I mean, I've been doing it for 20 plus years. So there's really nothing that they could throw at me in that little 5-minute audition that I wasn't going to be prepared for. And then, hey, it went great. We'll talk to you soon. I didn't really hear anything for the next couple of months. And then in April, they called. So again, this was January. April, they called and offered me a full-time job. And 9.5 years later, I've been there. But again, if not for me going to Stewart's funeral, I don't think I would have had that conversation with Rob King, quite honestly, because it just didn't occur to me that way. And I feel to this day that was like a gift from Stewart to me, right? He and I had always joked about working together and things of that nature. But once I got to LA, quite honestly, doing what I was doing and living in Southern California, the idea of moving to Bristol did not appeal to me. It really didn't. So that idea was like, yeah, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then because I was at his funeral, I was able to get out of Al Jazeera and go to ESPN. Even though he wasn't there, I do feel like that was like a final gift from him to me to say, yo, man, here's your out. Enjoy the rest of your career.
Definitely has worked out. So could definitely have been a gift. So you're from Kentucky, worked in Memphis, worked in California, working and living in Connecticut. What's your favorite location you've lived?
Oh, Southern California is not even funny. Like, and I'll always say, because I'm from such a small town, I'm from nowhere, so I can live anywhere.
Yeah.
And I lived in New York. I was there in Manhattan, and I love New York. But what I realized, I love visiting New York more than living in New York.
Yeah.
Because I'm accustomed to space, man. Like, I bought my first house when I was 25 and had 1,500 square feet, 2-car garage, and outdoor space. You can't get that in Manhattan. Like, just let's be real, right? And then LA, and I lived in Manhattan Beach the last 6 or 7 years, which I think is the best zip code in the country based on weather, access, all those things. So you just can't beat Southern California. If you're going to be really unbiased about anything, Southern California is the best place to live in the country.
That's what I've been hearing. Joe, you could attest to it. So maybe
I love it there. I miss it every day.
Right?
I got family over there.
Yeah. Even more reason to keep going back.
Yep. My uncle owns a building on Washington and Sepulveda, which is right down the block from where the NFL Network studios are.
Yeah, I know exactly where that is.
You got some time there, Joe. So, Michael, you've done it all as far as the shifts you worked at ESPN, the mornings, afternoons, late nights.
Yeah.
What's your favorite shift to work, and how early are you getting to the building to prepare for the show when it's going to go on live? Obviously, you're not getting there an hour before, hours before prep work. So talk to us about that.
It's funny. My favorite shift is the hardest shift, and that's the one I'm on now. The 11 o'clock Sports Center, basically. It's the hardest show to do in the building because you have the least amount of time to react to whatever's happened that night, right? The game's in either right before you come on or while you're already on, and then you have to react and do the highlights. Most of the highlights I do on 11 o'clock Sports Center, I've not seen until you guys see them. That's just the truth. Yep. The easiest show to do is the morning show because everything is done. All the highlights are done. All the shot sheets are waiting for you when you get there. And you just have to present them once you get out there. But you're still sort of like in like the highlight mode as opposed to once you get the afternoon, it's more conversations and setting up the day, I prefer that shift that I'm on now, also from a lifestyle standpoint, because you want to be up watching the games to begin with, right? And they're all at night.
Yeah.
Like when I had the morning shift, oftentimes I'd have to go to bed before some of those games were completed just so I could, be physically able to present those highlights the next morning. But you lose some of the context as a fan. If you didn't watch them, you're depending on the shot sheet with someone else cut and a recap that someone else wrote, as opposed to what you actually saw throughout the course of a game. So I never liked that shift. Also, don't like getting up early in the morning.
Who does?
But the only reason I like getting up early in the morning is for me to go play golf. And my current shift now allows me to play golf in the morning into the afternoon, shower, change, eat, and then go to work. Right. So from a lifestyle standpoint, that's why I love the shift I'm on now, despite it being the hardest shift to do at work. And to answer your second question about what time you get in, it really depends on the day and what time the show actually starts, right? So sometimes I do we call it the 11 o'clock, but it doesn't always come on at 11. Sometimes SVP comes on at 11 because he's coming on after the game. We come after him. So it's usually about a 6 to 7 hour window prior to the show starting when I get to the studio. It also depends, do we have any pre-tapes that have to be done with something we're putting together? So it varies day to day, but that window is pretty accurate, about 7, maybe 5 hours before the show comes on, you're at the studio.
So about 10 years ago, I was a finalist for the Associates program that has since, I think, disbanded probably a year or two after that. So right around the time that you got there. Nick and I have had many people on from ESPN, amazing stories. One thing in particular is the ESPN cafeteria. It's legendary, right? You love the cafeteria over there?
Oh, man. When I first got there, so when I came for my audition and when I first started, the caf was being renovated. So they had this temporary thing up in the parking lot, and I was like, "Why is everyone raving about the calf?" He's like, "Oh no, this is not it. You got to see the real one." And so when they finally reopened the other one, the coolest part about it was how cheap the food was, first and foremost, right? And then second, how good it was based on what you would expect from, regular lunch food or dinner food, because people there 24 hours a day. And you could get pretty much anything you wanted made to order,
Wow.
whether it's a burger, a grilled cheese, a salad, burrito, different pizzas. Like, it was just everything you would want, made to order, and was really cheap. And it's still relatively cheap now, though the prices have gone up like everything else. But once the real one reopened, I understood what everybody was talking about.
So recently you got back to your roots with golf. What were some of your other favorite events, specifically that you've gotten to cover while you were a member at the worldwide leader at ESPN?
Well, I got to go to the Olympics for the first time. That was 2016 in Rio, which was phenomenal. And to be able to see some of those events up close and personal, and also just some of the athletes. I mean, that was Simone Biles' really breakout year at the Olympics. Michael Phelps, Katie Ledecky. I got to go see swimming firsthand, which is phenomenal at that level in terms of just the production. And I saw the gold medal basketball game for the men. And to be in Rio, which I just absolutely love the city. I loved it so much. I was there for like 3 weeks for work, and then I stayed another 5 days just to kick it in Brazil. That was amazing. But yeah, and honestly, it's the Masters. I'm a golf nerd. I played junior golf and all the way up through high school. And the Masters it's hard to explain for people, especially who aren't golfers, but even if you are, once you're there, it's even better than you think it would be. Like Scott Van Pelt and I, we have this thing, we call it one of one. There are other golf tournaments, but there's only one Masters, right? And golf is not my favorite sport to cover. That's the NBA, but by far my favorite event is the Masters. So just being able to go and cover it for SportsCenter after 2 years, I believe, at ESPN was phenomenal. And then to eventually make my way onto the broadcast, interviewing players after the rounds on Thursday and Friday. I mean, dude, put that on my tombstone. Like, every year when Jim Nantz comes on and they say that they list the announcers, got the little box on the bottom of the screen, Jim Nantz, Nick Faldo, Frank Nobilo, blah, 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 Scott Van Pelt, Curtis Strange, and then it has Michael Eaves. Like, I take a picture of that every year. I say, you can put them on the back of my tombstone wherever I end up going to rest, because that is by far my high mark achievement. And I just wish my dad was alive to be able to see that, because he's the one that got me involved in golf, and he's the reason I still enjoy it to this day. But all the things I've done, I mean, I've covered every major event there is. But being a part of the Masters is huge.
So give me your dream foursome to play golf with. There are other people, no professional golfers. They have to be other
I like
people
that.
you might know.
I like that, actually, because usually it's always like going through a professional golfer in there. Now, dead or alive,
Yes.
do they have to be good at golf?
No, they could be horrible. They could never play golf before in their life. It could be a reality star, whatever you want.
So me, my dad, Prince, and who would my dad? Lena Horne. So Lena Horne is an older black actor and singer. If you look her up, just stunningly beautiful. And my dad had the biggest crush on Lena Horne. I remember, I mean, she grew up in the 50s, 60s, like, she was phenomenal. So Prince is my favorite artist of all time. So me and Prince could have a great conversation on one side of the fairway, while my dad is flirting with Lena Horne on the other side of the fairway. That would be the foursome if there's no professional golfers involved.
Joe, I think Happy Gilmore too. They should get Michael to do the commentary
so.
for the movie.
I'm open for all things golf, 100% on that.
Well, he has some previous comedic experience, so I want to talk about the This Is ESPN commercials, because yours is pretty good, right? I believe yours was with Zlatan Ibrahimovic, right?
Yep.
And the Oregon Duck, and so you're no stranger to on-camera comedy as opposed to on-camera sports. So what was it like, shooting the commercial? Because we know there are many, many iconic This Is ESPN commercials. And what is a commercial that maybe you have an idea for, or you maybe want to see one of your colleagues do? Like, What other type of this is ESPN commercial idea do you have?
So here's the one thing about shooting a commercial or a TV show, which I did once, and a couple movies, right? It's so different than doing live television because it requires, let me rephrase that. It asks of you for so many takes, right? And I think from my standpoint, a lot of takes we did in that commercial with Zlatan were unnecessary, right? There really wasn't much difference between one take and another take, but that's just how that type of production is shot, right? In television, if we have to tape something and it takes us more than 2 or God forbid 3 takes, we feel like failures, right? Because we are live. We do things live. And so if it takes us more than 2 or 3, we shouldn't be out there. So to sit there and do that commercial that took hours, that was only 15, 20 seconds, to me, it's like, bro, how many more times can I say this? How many more times can he walk in? It's just, for us in that world, it takes a lot, right? I did a movie called Even Money, and it was basically about gambling. And there was a scene where Nick Cannon was a college basketball player, and his brother, Forrest Whitaker, was betting on games, right? It took us 2 days to shoot basically what ended up being maybe 45 seconds to a minute and a half in the movie. And I was like, what is going on, right? And I was doing the play-by-play on the game, and I was like, it doesn't take this long. My wife, who worked in the film industry, gave me a heads up, like, it's going to be a lot of waiting and you're going to do a lot of takes. I'm like, sure, whatever. And then when we actually did it, I couldn't believe how many takes it took and how long we had to wait just for them to change the camera thing. So for us to go to that world is very hard because you're used to doing everything live. As far as the future commercials, we haven't shot as many lately as we have in the past for a myriad of reasons. But who would I like to see in one people that I think are very, very funny? I think Simone Biles needs to be in one just because how great she's been. I think you're going to see some more WNBA players involved. I'd love to see a Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese one where they're kind of playing off their rivalry as more of a friendship than what it actually is, kind of like counterintuitive to what people think the actual narrative is. And the thing about ESPN, we have some people that are really funny. John Buccigross is hysterical. You see what Elle Duncan does daily. I mean, she's a nut. So anything with her or Bucci, Randy Scott, I think is very, very funny. The shtick that he and Gary Streisky have in the morning. Nicole Briscoe is very dry with her humor. She's my work wife basically now, and she cracks me up on a regular. So the thing about us, because if you're going to do an entertaining sportscast, it's sports. It's got to be fun, right? And if you can't make light of certain things and bring some brevity to it, it's going to get boring after a while. And in order to do this job effectively, I think you have to just have some natural personality that's compelling, that can also be humorous.
So are there any scenarios where you've had to do an interview and potentially the subject was a tough interview, whether they were just a jerk or they're given the one word, yes, no answers? And on the flip side, who are some people that come to mind for you that you've interviewed that were great or very easy to speak with?
Yeah, you always have, look, I always say the professional athletes are basically a cross-section of society, right? You got some great people, you got some assholes. That's just the reality of it. But also sometimes when you're having to do some interviews after a competition is completed, you have to understand that sometimes you're talking to people about their failure, right? And they are processing that emotion in real time. And then they have to talk to you about it in front of the world. That's a tough spot, man. Think of anything that you've done in your life where you failed or you didn't accomplish what you tried to do. And then all of a sudden you have to tell the entire world why you fell short. All right. So I understand that sometimes. And you just have to deal with it and do your job and try to make that interview as compelling as possible, get out as much information as possible. While also, I feel, trying to show that athlete some compassion, right? Now, if they're being a jerk, then I think that energy can be matched to a certain degree as long as you maintain your professionalism. So I've been in those situations before as well. As far as the guys who've been just easy to interview, Torrey Hunter was great. When he came to the Angels from the Twins, Torrey just understood what that thing was supposed to be in terms of interview from player to fan, because we are supposed to be the conduit from the fan to the player, right? And he understood it, and he had a lot of fun with it. I think Jordan Spieth and Rory McIlroy give just tremendous perspective when they give answers to questions. They just don't give you cookie cutter answers. They actually listen to what you say. Scotty Scheffler's another one. They listen to what you say, and then they give it real thought, and then give you an answer that is directly related to what you asked them.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't get that. Some guys are just so programmed to give out answers. They just say whatever they want or what maybe they think the fans want to hear. But those guys who really get it and understand it always end up being the best interviews.
Absolutely. So that's great sound advice there. And I'm wondering if there's any time in your career or your life where you had a I'm right moment. When we got that, it's a time or place where you wanted to pursue something. You asked somebody for advice. They said, Michael, that's a terrible idea. Why would you do that? It's not going to work out. And you were like, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. And in the end, you will see why it is that I'm right about this. And I could tell you, I told you so.
A lot of people told me not to go to Al Jazeera. It didn't work out in the immediacy, but it did work out in the long run. Right. So I don't know if I can go back to them with an "I told you so" on that one. Honestly, when I first started putting sports content in the morning news shows and the cut-ins at WKYT, because it had never been done before, and people were like, and one of the news producers like, dude, why'd you put that Kentucky highlight in there? And you have to realize back then, like sometimes a Kentucky basketball game on ESPN on Tuesday night would start at like 9:30. And, by the time it ends, it's 11:30, almost midnight, and people are already in bed because they got to go to work the next morning. They didn't see, they may have heard the score, but they didn't see the actual highlights. So that ended up becoming a thing that I got a lot of positive feedback from viewers saying, thank you for putting that highlight in there. I never would have saw it if you hadn't done that. So that was the first one that really comes to mind. And then I think some of the other ones was just my approach to doing interviews and covering teams, right? I think there's some people who get involved in sports to be fanboys and fangirls. They do it just so they can get close to some of their favorite teams and favorite athletes. And if you do it solely for that, you're going to get exposed as a homer, and you won't do your job effectively because your emotions get involved, and you're either protecting your favorite team or you're giving them praise they don't deserve, right? But my approach is be friendly without the expectations of being friends, right? And so oftentimes I would go and talk to athletes when I wasn't getting an interview from them or didn't need anything from them, just to develop a rapport. And some people criticize me for trying to be chummy with the athletes. That's not what I was trying to do, but I didn't want them to look at me as if every time they saw me, I wanted something from them, right? And if you actually get to know people on a personal level, when you do need something or you're actually doing your job, what is required, they're probably going to give you better answers because they know you better and they know you have a job to do, and they respect that because you're not coming to them every time you need something. Think about anybody else in your life. The only time they come to you is when they need something, whether a favor or money. How do you look at them? But what about the people who literally just check on you to see how you're doing? What's going on in your life? Is there anything I can help you with? Like, let's say a player has a charity event or something going on. It's like, hey, do you have something going on? We could mention on the pregame show or something like that. People respect that and they appreciate that. And if you can establish that type of relationship, that is not a friendship. It's a relationship that's not a friendship, that I think you'd be more effective at the job.
Very, very well said. Great insight. It's a good segue to the last thing that I have for you. And then, Mike, we know we're busy. We'll let you go. Talk about your work with Tiger's Indoor Golf League. Because, again, it sounds like what you were saying here, just developing, a friendly type of rapport with other people kind of helped you along the way with that. So talk about doing that.
Well, look, we were talking earlier about right place, right time. I think in this industry, it is about the connections you make and the people you know. Like, one, you have to be able to do the job. Let's get that squared away right off the jump. You have to be really good at what you do, but you have to know people who are involved in certain things, right? So through the years, I've developed some relationships and contacts with people, and obviously at ESPN, which we're going to be broadcasting, that helped me get to the position I'm in. And so if I do golf for ESPN and ESPN has a new golf package, pretty good chance I'm going to be involved. And some of the people who work on the TGL side, used to work at different places, knew me from that, right? So that's how you get involved in things. I'm excited about this, because, as I said earlier, I'm a golf nerd, but also because this thing is literally the culmination of what we've seen happening in sports for the last couple of years. It is the merging of sports and technology. What you're going to see from a media and technology standpoint is going to blow you away, with just the screen that's built that the guys are going to be hitting into, the numbers and the analytics that we're going to be using to tell you how the shots are made and the results. And also this indoor facility, it has a full-fledged green, a putting surface, right, that rotates, right? So each shot you hit is going to be different to the green based on where the flag is and how the green rotates. They have all the different types of grasses: fairway, first cut, rough, deep rough, sand, fairway sand, greenside sand. All the different things that you can put together on a golf course. They're going to do it indoors, and we're going to do it on television. All the guys are going to be mic'd up with IFB so they can hear what everyone's saying. Like, it is literally what we want in sports, to be as close and involved in it as possible with technology at our fingertips. It's going to be phenomenal. At least I hope it's going to be phenomenal, because I'm excited about it.
Well, we are excited as well. Mike, we appreciate your time. We thank you. We know, again, like I said, you're busy. What we do here is we always give our guests the last words. So if there's anything else you would personally like to share or promote for yourself, by all means, go ahead. We wish you the best of luck moving forward. Hopefully we'll stay in touch. Hopefully we'll be able to meet in person one day. And like I said, if there's anything else you would personally like to share or promote, by all means, go ahead. Thanks again.
I think anyone who wants to pursue what I do for a career, as I said earlier, you have to do more work than other people are prepared to do. You have all of the technology at your disposal now to work on your craft, way more so than I did 20, 30 years ago. Your phone is literally a TV studio. You can take clips, you can put together sportscasts, or like you guys, you can do your own podcast. But you have to put in the work as if you were trying to be a professional athlete. Work on your craft, work on your writing. If you want to be in this business and be in this business for a long time, it's about telling stories. The better you can write, the better you can tell stories. Whether you're writing for the New York Times, you're writing for SportsCenter, or just doing a podcast. The better you write, the better stories you can tell, and that's what people are going to remember.
Very well said, Michael. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And that's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our very special guest, Michael Eaves, for my co-host, Joe Calabrese, I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.